Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. Welcome to our mega session all about chords. So today we've got a live lesson. We're going to be here for the next hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how long you can bear me. And we're going to investigate chords. What chords are, how all those different chords are built and why they're different to each other. So, good. Hi everyone. I'm just going to have a look through the comments a second because I might have missed some of you whilst I was just getting ready. Hi guys. Hope you're all doing well. Fantastic. There we go. Brilliant. So Linda's got her coffee and a Coke. That's like double the caffeine, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant. And everyone's got their grey cells on charge, which is fantastic. There's not going to be so much playing in this workshop today. We're going to really dig into a lot of theory. So I want you to kind of just make your brains like a sponge and just soak in as much as you can. And I think with this session, more than any others that we've done so far, I think it's going to be really important that you ask questions. So if you're on the live chat, you can ask me questions live. There's always a delay of a couple of minutes, but I'll see them come up and I'll try and address them as I can. If I can't answer a question, I'll be totally honest about it, and I'll try and signpost you to somewhere where we can answer it. So, but fingers crossed, we'll be okay. It's lucky we're not doing too much playing today because I managed to stab myself with a chisel this morning. I'm building my own ukulele with Phil Davidson, who's a brilliant luthier, and I decided to test how sharp one of his chisels were on my finger by accident, and it turns out the chisel was very sharp. So I'm a little bit injured today, but hopefully that's right because we're not going to do too much playing. But grab your uke because it's going to be really handy. Hi Esther, hi Dad. It's going to be really handy for testing out these chords. So have it handy. We might play through some lovely chord progressions, because sometimes to learn how these chords work, it's really nice to see them in a function. Just a couple of bits of housekeeping. First off, an apology to anyone that's ordered a t-shirt with me. I know some of you have. I've got some lovely t-shirts that we've got being printed up at the moment. So half of the order came today and the rest of the order is due hopefully in the next day or two. So I haven't forgotten you. They're on their way out. And a massive thanks to everyone that's sent over donations and tips this week as well. As always, I haven't had a chance to get back to everyone individually yet, but I just wanted you to know how grateful I am. I really appreciate it. The other thing I wanted to show you just ever so quickly is a little bit of a little advert for something we've got coming up next year. So if anyone enjoys my live lessons and you'd like some in person, next year we're going to have a really exciting ukulele retreat right here in the Forest of Dean. We're going to have 5 or 6 tutors. We've already confirmed our UK tutors, who are the brilliant Phil Dolman, who's going to be doing blues and pop. We've got Percy doing country bluegrass. Percy Copley, that is. We've got Samantha Muir, who's going to do classical ukulele. And we have 2 others coming in from abroad. And one of them both of them I'm super excited about, but one of them's going to cover Hawaiian ukulele, which is super excited, isn't it? Super exciting. It's over 3 days. It's all based in the Forest of Dean, and we're holding it in a beautiful, beautiful old hunting lodge which belonged to King Charles II, and is surrounded by 100 kilometres of forest. So we're going to have ukulele walks in the forest. We're going to have sessions every day, concerts every night. We can have ukulele meditation in the gardens, all sorts of fun stuff. So if you can make it, have a look at the website there. It's all on my website down the bottom. We've sold 60% of tickets already, which is just mind-blowing. So thank you so much for your support. So if you are thinking of coming, have a look and get in soon, particularly the accommodation, because Speech House have only got 8 rooms left. So get in if you can. Here's a lovely picture. Hang on, there it is. That's Speech House where we're going to be doing it. It's really pretty, right in the middle of the forest. What else did I need to tell you about? I think that was mostly it. Yeah. Oh, the other thing is just if I've got any of my regular Kanakapila students here, just a reminder that we are going to be away this Monday because in the UK we've got the bank holiday for the funeral of the Queen. So we'll be back with that in 2 weeks' time. Right, well, hope you're all keeping well. Shall we dig in? Let's have a look at our sheets. Now, these are still available for download if you haven't got them already. Victoria's got sangria. That's even better. Well done, Victoria. You'll have more fun than everyone else. The sheets are still available to download. Link is in the description if you'd like to. I'll put them on screen as well as much as possible. And I'll highlight bits that are important. I realised probably too late to warn some of you that if you can print these out in colour, it's a bit easier to see how some of these chords are formed because some of the notes are highlighted. But if you haven't, you can always get your highlighter out or a pen and just circle them. So, that's big gulp of coffee. Let's dig right in. So first of all, I know it sounds like totally daft, but what is a chord? I can't do a whole lesson on every different kind of chord without telling you what they are. Hi, Jane. So a chord is basically a collection of 3 or more notes. Sometimes it can be as many as 9 notes, believe it or not, in a chord. We can only do 4 notes at a time on a ukulele, right? So we kind of have to cheat a little bit. But it's a collection of notes that are played all at the same time. So melody is where we play, hi Peter, hi Margaret. Melody is where we play 1 note at a time. That would be a melody. And chords are where we take a few notes and we play them all at the same time. That gives us a chord. And of course, these are the bedrock of music. And there are so many different chord types, aren't there? You've got like major 7ths, minor 7ths, you've got 9ths, 13s, suspended, augmented, diminished, all these crazy types of chord. And it can be overwhelming, I think, when you're first starting to play ukulele, or even if you've been playing a few years, but you've never really dipped into the theory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify it as much as possible. Now, first thing I want to go over, and this is really important, is what we call diatonic chords. That means from the tonic or from a key or scale. And the diatonic chords are the chords that naturally occur in every key. So imagine you're an artist, and that's me putting paint on a palette, by the way. Not doing anything more rude. You're putting your paint on your palette. Well, what composers will do, whether it be a pop song or a piece of sophisticated classical music, is they will use certain chords that come up in every key, and every key has 7 common chords that come up each time. And if you can learn those chords, it's going to help you to play music, because it's going to help you to appreciate what chords are going to come up, and it's going to help you to practice chord progressions, and it's also going to help your understanding. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the key of C first of all, because it's a nice easy one with no sharps and flats. And we're going to have a look at all of the common chords that come up in the key of C, and I'm going to show you physically how it happens. So if you have a look at this sheet here, which is our first sheet, let's go in a little bit bigger if I can. There we go. You can still see my head. I need to go that way. I always go the wrong way, don't I? It's mirror image. So in the key of C, we have 7 main chords that come up. And the way chords are built in any key, and I found this really fascinating when I learned this a few years back, is really simple. We take the first note of a scale, so in the key of C, this will be C, and we take that note, then we skip one, we take the next note, we skip one, and we take the next note. So the first chord in the key of C, if you have a look at that, the first one, we have C, we've skipped D, we have E, we've skipped F, and we have G. Now, if we take those notes, I know this might be a little bit basic in some ways, but it's really important theory, isn't it? If we, all the right keys on the piano for the C major scale, well done Peter, you got it mate. If we have a look at those notes, let me see if I can get my close cam, there we go. The note C, this is a C on your ukulele. E, this is an E on your ukulele. And G, this is a G on your ukulele. If we play all of those 3 notes at the same time, that, believe it or not, is a C major chord. That's the first chord in the key of C. Now, we've got 4 strings on our ukulele, right? And we've only got 3 notes in a C chord. So what we do is we can duplicate one of those notes. So what we do when we play a C is we play C, E and G, and we add another C. So a C major chord is just the notes C, E and G. It really is that simple. And people get confused with chords because you can play them all over the fretboard. I could play a C major chord up here. I can even play one way up here. And all that is different versions. It's just C, E and G in different orders all over the fretboard. That's how it works. So let me come back again. Let's have a look at the next chord that comes up in the key of C. Well, we're going to start counting from D, aren't we? Because that's the next note in the key of C. Notice we've got D, we skip one, F, we skip one, A, D, F, A. And you can see those are highlighted in red if you've got your colour sheets. You can see it on mine if you've got black and white ones. So the next chord that comes up in the key of C is a D, and in this case it's a D minor. Now loads of you are going to ask, why is that one a D minor and the first one was a major? And I'm going to answer that in a minute, but just car park that question for a minute because I just want to show you. Let's have a look at that one. Now when we play a D minor, let's check it out. This note here on the C string is a D. This note here on the E string is an F, because we've gone E, F. This one up here is an A. Okay. Now, because we've got 3 strings on a ukulele, we need to do another note down here, and we can basically use D, F, or A, any of the other notes from the chord. Now, the easiest one, because this string is A, is to do an open A. So we have D, F, A, A. And we get a D minor chord. Hopefully you're starting to see how this works. Again, I'll explain the minor major thing in a minute, but I just want to go through all the chords just in one key so you can see how it works. We build the next chord. The next chord starts from E, which is the next note along in our scale. We play E, we miss one, that gives us G. We miss one, that gives us B. So can you see how all these chords, we call them the natural diatonic chords, they're just built by taking a note, skipping one, playing the next one, skipping one, playing the next one. It turns out this is an E minor. Again, I'll explain why it's a minor in a minute. But when we play E minor on our ukulele, this note here is an E, believe it or not. It's the same as this one. So we've got E, then we've got this one here, which is a G, this one here, which is a B. And when we put them all together, we have an E minor. Okay. And again, we repeat a note. This note up here is a G, which is the same as this one here. See how it's working? I won't go through everyone because it'll bore you. But the next chord that we get is an F, and we play the F note. We skip one, gives us A. We skip one, gives us C. And an F chord is F, A, and C. Same with G, we go G, we skip one, we don't play A, we play B, we skip one, we play D, a G chord, it's G, B and D. That's really magic. So when an artist is going to write a song in the key of C, these are the chords that naturally occur in the key of C. These are the ones that are going to come up. Why is that helpful? Well, you know, if you get a song that's in the key of C, you can guess what chords are likely to come up. And if you practice these chords in each key, it means you'll get better and better at playing them, which is really fantastic. Now, again, I'll explain the minor major thing in a minute just to show you. But I just wanted to show you this bit over here in red. Let me just make that a bit bigger. Covering my face. Oh no, too big. There we go. In every key, if we number the chords from 1 to 7, we always end up, the 1 chord is a major, the 2 chord is a minor, I'll explain mine in a sec, the 3 chord is a minor, the 4 chord is a major, the 5 chord is a major, the 6 chord is a minor, and the 7th chord is something called a diminished. We're not going to sweat that at the moment. Now, what I think would be nice would be to play through those chords so you can hear every chord that comes up naturally in the key of C. So you can just follow my fingers. Most of you will know these chords. I'll help you out with that diminished at the end. But we have C. Let's just strum 4 times. D minor. E minor. F. G. A minor. And then the B diminished, we're going to play a B diminished 7th because it's easier on our ukuleles. That's an awkward one. It's 1, 2, 1, 2. The easiest way I think of fingering it is put your little finger on the 2nd fret of the A string and then just build like a G shape over the top. You don't have to worry about that one for now. It rarely comes up, just so you can see it. And back to C. So if I was a composer and I was going to write a song, I could put any of those chords together. C, F works, doesn't it? I want a bit of melancholy, let's use D minor. And maybe F, D minor, G, and C. And that's how it works. That's our palette that we're going to use to build songs. So a really good thing to do is to practice through each of those chords, one at a time, to get your fingers used to them. By going back to where you started. Now, it doesn't matter what key you're in, those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those types of chords are always the same. So, if we're going to play a song in the key of, I don't know, let's say F. We're going to play a song that's in the key of F. We would take the F major scale, and if you don't know the F major scale, I'll tell it to you, and you can always look it up on Google or in a book later on. But the F major scale is F, G, A, B flat. Every key has one or more sharps or flats, apart from C, which has none. And then C, D, and E. So I take that scale, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, and E, and I can work out what chords are going to come up in the key of F. That's really cool, isn't it? Because the first chord will always be a major, as you can see there. That would be an F. The second chord is always a minor, so that's going to be G minor. The third chord is always a minor, so that would be A minor. Fourth chord is a major, so that's B flat major, just B flat. 5th chord is major, so that would be C. Just going through the alphabet, aren't we, apart from that B flat. The next one, the 6th chord is always a minor, so D minor. Oh, what am I doing there? Sorry, being daft. And then finally, the last one, which is E in this case, is going to be a form of diminished chord. This is a bit of a weird one here in the key of F. And then we go back to F. So what I quite like to do, if it's a bit boring, we call it woodshedding in kind of jazz and blues music. What I think are really good practices to learn the chords that come up in any key. Write your scale out, apply those chord qualities, major, minor, or whatnot going across, and then play through them. And those are the chords that are most likely to come up in any key. The reason I say most likely is that some musicians will borrow chords that shouldn't really come up in a key, and they'll borrow them from another scale. Or sometimes they'll change one of those chords around. So rather than playing like an A, they might play an A7. But yeah, the basic chords that they will use are these, and we call them the diatonic chords. Neat, right? Just literally playing a note and skipping one, and that's how you get all the chords that come up. I think that's cool. So let me know if you've got any questions with that before I move on to the next thing. Next thing I wanted to look at is why are some chords called major and why are some called minor? And there's even that funny diminished one at the end, isn't there? So just going to take, I promised you might need coffee today, didn't I? So I'm going to have a slurp of mine to keep my grey matter going, and then we'll have a look at major and minor chords. I'll just hang on a second in case any questions are going to come in. There we go. See, those virtual coffees you buy me, they do turn into real coffees. It's a very nice one as well. It's not very good for me because it's a macchiato, which is full of sugar, but it's very nice. It keeps me going. Okay. Hi, David. No worries. No worries. So let's have a look then. Why are some chords called major chords and why are some chords called minor chords? It's all about the intervals, and that just means the gap between notes. A lot of this stuff, isn't it? Fancy pants words, but it's really simple. So an interval is just a gap between two notes. Now, when we look at the first chord, the C major, let's have a think about the first two notes that came up in C major. It was C and E, wasn't it? Okay, because we skipped D. When we look at the notes, if we look at something called the chromatic scale, which is all the notes, not in a key, but all the notes you can literally play in the world, that's 12 notes, just C through to C again, going from the alphabet. Okay, some of them have sharps and flats, some don't, but you can easily learn that. If anyone's seen my beginners course, you'll know I remember it as B, C, E, F, because elephants fart. There's no sharps, there's no B sharp and there's no E sharp, so that's how I remember it. Well, the interval between C and E is what we call a major third. That's a major third is 2 whole steps, and a whole step is 2 notes. You'll see what I mean in a minute, I promise. So if I go C and I apply all the notes in the world, it could be a C sharp, D, D sharp, E. Okay, C to D is a whole step because there's a C sharp in the middle, C, C sharp, D. And D to E is a whole step because there's a D sharp in the middle, D, D sharp, E. And we call that 2 whole steps. And that has a fancy pants name. 2 whole steps is a major third. Now, because our notes aren't symmetrical, because not every note has a sharp and flat in it, when you build certain chords, that interval is different. For instance, if we have a look at D minor, the first 3 notes that we worked out in D minor, this is on page 2 if you want to follow it, just about halfway down. We worked out that the notes that make up a D minor are D, F, and A, didn't we? Now let's have a look at the interval between that D and F, the first 2. Well, we have D, D sharp, E, that's a whole step. But E to F, there's no sharp, so it just goes E, F. So the interval is smaller. We have a whole step and a half step. I'll do that again. D, D sharp, E, that's a whole step. But E to F, there's no sharp. There is no E sharp in Western music. So that means we have 1.5 or 1.5 steps. And we call that a minor third. And it's just a coincidence, because our notes aren't symmetrical, that some chords have a minor third and some chords have a major third. And when we have that minor third, that smaller interval, it affects the feel of the chord. That major interval produces a happy sounding chord. Kind of upbeat, yeah, and kind of, you know, kind of just almost like your primary colours. Whereas minor chords, we associate it with sadness or darkness, and that's just the sound of that minor third. Now, every time I explain something in this workshop, I'm going to try and give you 2 ways to explain it, because I've learned the hard way. I've been teaching this stuff for 25 years. I learned the hard way that everyone thinks about things differently. So you can either think about the difference between major chords and minor chords as the difference between the first 2 notes being a major third or a minor third. Another way to do it, and another way we often refer to chords, is as a formula. And we compare them to their major equivalent. I'll show you what I mean. If we have a look at that D minor again, where are we? I'm going to try and make this as big as I can, and then I'll scooch over so I'm not totally disappearing. There it is. If I put it up there, look. Okay. So the notes that we discovered that come up for a D minor are D, F and A. But if we look at a D major scale, have a look at the notes that we should expect for the first, the third and the fifth notes. Okay. For some reason, I've put the fourth as red. It should be the A at the end, but that doesn't really matter anyway, because it's the difference between D and E sharp we need to look. But have a look at that. In the key, in a D major chord, or if we think of a D major scale, the third note should be an F sharp. It's just something you learn or something you can find in a book. But the notes that we had come up, it was an F, not an F sharp. So often this is shown as a formula, 1 flat 3 5. And if you ever see 1 flat 3 5, that's just shorthand for saying a major third, and then we've got the fifth note of the key of the scale added. And when you apply all of these chords over the course of a scale, you'll see that some of the chords are major and some of the chords are minor. It really is that simple. And as I say, if we go back to that first sheet, just to kind of hammer that home, because I think it's really good to go over things a few times. If we have a look at them, have a look again, the first chord is a major, then we've got second is minor, third is minor, fourth is major, fifth is major, sixth is minor, and seventh, we'll have a look at this next, is a diminished chord. Okay, so the C, F and the G all have major thirds at the start of them. The D, the E and the A minor all have minor thirds at the end. And that's how we have a difference between major and minor. Just let me know if that's making kind of sense, everyone. Don't worry if this doesn't all go in every time. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you. I was joking to one of my students, but in all seriousness the other day, that when I was learning jazz theory, because I've got really into jazz stuff, because I've turned into a bit of a musical nerd, I would watch videos and read books, and I would have to read a book or watch a video sometimes 5 or 6 times before it finally went in. And like each time you read it, it's like, yeah, that's starting to make sense. And it'll be the same with this. So if some of this goes a bit over your head the first time, don't sweat it. You can revisit this video as many times as you want. If you've got those chord sheets, they're there for you forever, right? You can use them forever. And you can always test some of this stuff out, which is really good. The diminished chord one is a little bit unusual in that, if I can just bring up the next sheet. There we go. I'm going to do a lot of skipping sheets today. There we go. No worries, Angela. How far have they got for the royal procession? Has she made it to the abbey? Right, so that explains the major minor third is there, so that explains what we've got so far. Let's just go on to the diminished ones, which is the next sheet, I think. There we go. Oh, I seem to have that sheet. For some reason, we've got one sheet twice in our sheets. I don't know if everyone else has got that. Here we are, diminished chords. So if we know that a major chord is a 1, 3, 5, or it has a major third at the start, and then it has a perfect fifth. Okay, don't worry about that too much. Just think of it as like a majory fifth, all right? Just a really solid perfect fifth. Well, a diminished chord is a 1, a flat 3, and a flat 5. It's almost like two minor, you can think of it as like two minor intervals. And we call them diminished because if you think about, to diminish something means to make it smaller, doesn't it? Or kind of flatten it. And that's why we call it a diminished chord. It has both a flatted third and a flatted 7. And those are really spooky sounding chords. It's kind of like, you know Tom and Jerry? It's like that kind of feel. They're used a lot in jazz and kind of comic music, and lots of ragtime music as well use diminished chords. So that's all the chords that naturally come up in a key. Now, to be honest, guys, that is most of the chords in the world. Most chords that you're playing on your ukulele will be either major or minor or diminished. Those are like your main 3 chord types, okay? And they're all built from 3 notes, as we saw. Oh, she's lying in Westminster. Oh, thank you, Angela. Thanks for letting me know. Thank you. So all of these chords are built from 3 notes. And we call those 3-part chords. 3 notes, 3-part chords. It makes sense, right? Well, we can take things up a notch. We can make them all a little bit more sophisticated. And this is what a lot of jazz players do, but also a lot of pop musicians as well. We can have 4-part chords. It literally just means we add another note. I'll show you what I mean. If we have a look at this sheet, it's on the screen. It might be better. Page 5 in yours, guys, if you want to have a look at it. Nice and big. So, you know when we built all the 3-part chords in a scale, we took the first note we're starting from, say C. We skipped one, didn't we? So not D, we had E. We skipped one, so not F, we had G. That gave us our 3-part chord. That would have been C major. Well, if we want to add another note to make the chord more sophisticated, guess what we do? We skip a note. It's that simple. So instead of playing A, we go to B. Where are we? Trying to everything's mirror image on YouTube. It always confuses me when I try and put my hands together like this. So if we want a more sophisticated C chord, we can play the note C, E and G, 1, 3, 5. And we can also skip the 6th and we can play the 7th. Has anyone heard of a major 7th chord? They're used a lot, aren't they, in jazz music? They're really beautiful, mellow sounding chords. Well, that's what a C major 7th is. If we're playing 4-part chords, the 1 chord in any key is a C major 7. That literally just means a C major triad. That just means the first 3 notes, the C major chord. And they have a 7th on the top. What's the 7th note in the key of C? It's B, right? Well, let's test what we've got here. Let me come in close again. Here we go. So, our C chord was C, E, and G. And then because it's a 3-part chord, we had to repeat a note, didn't we? So we put another C on. Well, C major 7 chord is C, which is your first, E, which is your 3rd, major 3rd, your 5th, G, B, which is here. That's an interesting note. Doesn't it sound so different to the others? But listen how beautiful it sounds when you put them all together. It's a C major 7 chord. An easy chord to play, but I think one of the most beautiful chords in the world. And the reason it sounds more sophisticated, I like to think of it as more rich, is because we've got an added note. Because it still has that major chord underneath it with the 7th note of the scale, we call that a C major 7. And we can do the same thing to build all these lovely 4-part chords. So if you look down the bottom of that sheet, the next chord as a 4-part chord would be a type of D. Do you remember it was D minor, wasn't it, when we built it 3-part chord, which was D, F and A. Okay. Notice that if we skip another note, we have a C. Notice I've had to write the scales out, kind of carrying on almost infinitely, because you start running out of room in one scale. So if we add the 7th note along, or the 7th one along from D, we end up with a C. And notice we've just skipped notes. D, we've not played E, we've skipped, we've got F. We've not played G, we've skipped, we've got A, D, F and A, that's your D minor. We've skipped the B and we've got a C. And a D minor with the 7th note added is called D minor 7, just like a C major with the 7th note added is a C major 7. So the natural 4-part chord we have coming up on that 2nd degree in the key of C is D minor 7. And you can do that all the way through. Let's make this smaller again so you can see me. Okay. As I say, any questions, just stick them in the comments because I'm really, really happy to help. I want to make sure you're all getting this. And what I've done is I've listed all of them. We don't have to go for every one, but if we want to have a look at what the 3rd chord is in the key of C as a 4-part chord, it's on page 6. It's on page 6 of your sheets. Okay. And have a look what we have there. We have an E, we've skipped one, we have a G, we've skipped one, we have a B, we've skipped one, we have a D. So that's an E minor with the 7th note along added, okay, which is a D, and that gives us an E minor 7. See how that's working? It's a beautiful chord. You have to change it around lots to play an E minor 7 because it just falls awkwardly on a ukulele. Sorry about my manky finger if you're just joining me. I managed to chip it cut it with a chisel when I was making a ukulele earlier. This would be an E minor 7. It's no finger here, 2nd fret of the C string, no finger on the E string, and the 2nd fret of the A string. Lovely sounding chord. And if we look at the notes, they're the red ones that I've got. We've got an E, okay. We've got a G, we've got a B down here, and we've got a D here. When you put those all together, E minor 7. Keeps working out like that. An F major chord with the 7th note added is an F major 7. So that's the one that comes up, an F major 7. Beautiful sounding chord again. There's a difficult way you can do it by adding fingers here, and we can kind of, here, and we can stretch across, which is quite painful to do. So an easy way of playing an F major 7, if you want to hear it, is 5-5-0-0 from nose to toes. Just 2 fingers on the 5th fret, top 2 strings nearest your nose. F major 7, beautiful sounding chord. Now, here's where that coffee comes in. Everyone ready? Deep breath. The 5th chord, something funny happens. Okay, let's have a look at it. So the 5th chord in the key is built from G. And when we did it, it's a normal 3-part chord. It was a G major, right? Because we went G, we skipped a note, gave us B. We skipped a note, gave us D. Whoops, not that one. Okay. So G, B and D is our G major. And what we do is we skip another one. Okay. This is your 3rd lot of notes down if you're looking on page 6. We skip another one, and that won't be an E, it'll be an F, right? Because that's 2 over, so we would get an F. So G, B, D and F. Now, every key has one chord that we call the dominant 7th. It's not a major 7th, which is a major chord with the 7th added. It's not a minor 7th, which is the minor chord with a 7th added. It's a major chord with the flatted 7th added. It's like a minor 3rd stuck on the top. Think of it as a formula is probably the easiest way to understand this one. If we look at the notes that come up, we've got G, B, D and F. Let me make this really big so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, now I mean just over here, you'll just about be able to see me. Okay, see over here on this line here, the notes that make up this chord are G, B, D and F, and we did it just by skipping a note each time. In the key of G, what we'd expect if we're in a G major scale, the 7th note in the key of G is F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. Don't worry about Y for now, but as I said, every major scale has a certain amount of sharps and flats. G has 1 sharp. So that last interval is not a major 7th, it's a flatted 7th, or a minor, you can think about it as a minor 7th. So we put a formula down as 1, 3, 5, that's your major triad, and then we add a flatted 7th, an F rather than an F sharp. And it's always the 5th chord in a scale that has that, and we call that the dominant 7. I'm going to try and explain that using types of C chord to show you, because I think it's kind of a nice way of doing it. So let's have a look. When we play a normal C chord, let me come in close. There we go. Just checking there's no, just before I go into this, just checking there's no questions yet. No, we're okay. So a C chord, a C major chord, is 1, 3, 5, C, E, G, plus another 1. You can think about this as 1, okay, because we're just playing another C. A C major 7 is C, E, G, plus the 7th note of the scale added. And you can just count up the 7th note of C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. It's just like the alphabet, isn't it? When you get to G, you start going from A. So it's B. The 7th note in the key of C is B. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And that's what we have here. A major chord with the 7th added. Now a C7 is different from a C major 7 because the 7th note, the B, is played as a flat. Totally different sound, right? Only 1 note difference. But it gives it a totally different sound. So what we call the dominant chord, or just a plain old Jane 7 if it doesn't have a major or minor in front of it, has a different property. It has that flatted 7. That's what gives it that gritty feel. A lot of blues is built off 7th chords because they have a more gritty sound. I think of it this way. A normal major chord, happy. Major 7th, floaty and rich. Dominant 7th, otherwise just known as like C7, gritty. Okay, so that's what's happening with all these different chord types if you think of them as a formula. So, oh, good question, Esther. Yeah, quite right. So if we played G, B, D and F sharp rather than G, B, D and F, it would be a G major 7. Yeah, because the G dominant 7 just has that 7th note flatted. Okay. A long story short is as you apply each of these types of chords in a key, just like with the 3-part chords, we can have a whole kind of palette of chords, if you like. This is how it works out. Can you see the top of page 7, folks? Here it is. Put it over here. I'll come over here. There we go. So the 3-part chords, let's just do them again, just remind yourself. The 3-part chords, which is just where we skip notes 3 times, in the key of C is C, D minor, E minor, F, bog standard G, A minor, and a B diminished 7th or a B diminished. Okay. When we do the 4-part chords, notice how much more rich they sound. We have a C major 7. Just copy my fingers. We have a D minor 7. That's just a D minor with this finger added. We have an E minor 7. That's one I showed you earlier, 0202. We have an F major 7. That was that 5500. We have a G7, not a G. A minor 7, and then finally we have something called a half diminished chord. This is often written as minor 7 flat 5, which actually is something that looks like this. If you want to play this one, it's quite difficult to do. It's like a D minor chord with our little finger on the 2nd fret of the A string. Got that D minor, but at the 2nd fret here. B minor 7 flat 5. That just means a minor 7th chord with the 5th note flatted. Don't sweat it. It's just what comes up automatically, diatonically in each key. Okay, and that's why jazz musicians love these 4-part chords, because they sound really rich and lush. Now, a really great way to make use of these is to start practicing them in each key. So you know how we went through all the chords that made up just the normal 3-part chords in C? A really great way to practice this is to look at the circle of fifths, or just look up lots of different scales, major scales, and start finding out these chords. If you don't know them off by heart, you can look them up. So I've got a book. I'm allowed to say it's good because I wrote it and with my friend John. And if you're not sure how to play these chords, you just look them up. You just literally just look them up, and it will show you all sorts of places to play them all over the fretboard. And to show that I'm actually a communist at heart, I really am, and not a money-making person, You don't have to have the book. It's a really cool and excellent resource, but Google it, right? Just Google the D major scale and see if you can look up all the chords, work them out. So it'd be D major 7th, E minor 7th, F sharp minor 7th in D, and so on and so forth. You could just look them up and then apply them and then practice them. And that gives you two really important things. It gets you practicing the chords that are likely to come up in any key, so you find it a lot easier to play them and you have a brilliant practice regime. But it also means if you're trying to work out the chords in a song without literally having them written in front of you, you know the 7 chords that are likely to come up in every key. So you just try all of those chords and see if they fit. And if none of them fit, then the composer's been a bit naughty and they've borrowed some chords from another key. Okay. So that's all of the natural chords that come up in any key. And they're always the same no matter what key you're in, okay? C, D, E, F, G, whatever it is, they're always the same. It always goes major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, or 4-part, major 7, minor 7, minor 7, major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, and then that minor 7 flat 5, also called a half diminished chord. I'm going to let you just kind of soak that in just for a little minute. Just whilst I'm waiting to see if any comments come in, let's have a really nice kind of little chord progression that we can build using some of those 4-part chords. One of my favourite chord progressions, this is something that comes up in loads of music, is something called a 2-5-1 progression. That just means the second chord from a scale in a key of C, that'd be a D minor 7, followed by the 5th chord in a scale, which is a 4-part would be G7, followed by the 1 of the scale, which in the key of C would be C major 7 if we're doing 4-part. 2-5-1. It's really lovely. If you just play a D minor, but add your little finger here, it gives you D minor 7. And then pivot on this finger here to G7. And then take away everything but that ring finger, C major 7. Sometimes I think on ukulele we're so intent on learning pieces of repertoire or kind of what I would call kind of tricky stuff, you know, just kind of showy offy stuff, that we forget just the beauty of the sound of our ukulele with some of these beautiful chords. Those 4-part chords sound beautiful. D minor 7, G7. And those are some of the most common 4-part chords to come up in any key. It's the start to those falling leaves drift by my window. And Peter, who read my mind, if you put another chord in front of it, it's also Fly Me to the Moon. Yeah, it's loads of jazz progressions, which is really nice. So I'm just going to pause for a second, and just if anyone's got any questions, bring them up now, because otherwise forever hold your peace. Because we're going to go and look at what about all those other types of chords, like, you know, what about augmented chords and suspended chords? I'm going to show you what all of those types of chords are. Believe it or not, if you stick with me to the end of this session, you'll understand how every type of chord that we can play in the world is created. How cool is that, right? So stick about. We'll just see if we've got any. So yeah. Oh, Karen, sorry to hear you're feeling unwell. Yeah, I like the hard copy as well, Karen. I'm a bit of a one for that. Not a lot of people will know this, but before I was a ukulele player, I had 2 main jobs for my whole life. I worked in libraries, so I was a librarian, a children's librarian, then I was like an area manager, so I managed lots of libraries, so books are close to my heart. And I also used to run a little bookshop as well, so you know how some people sniff ukulele holes when they get a new ukulele? I like to sniff books. It's better than sniffing dangerous substances, isn't it? So yeah, you can't beat a good book and the feel of it and being able to scribble in it. But if you live somewhere and you're not able to get this easily, I will ship worldwide, but there is a digital version available, and some people like that. Some people like to be able to scroll it iPad, that's totally fine. This is like a reference book, so all of the scales, all of your chords, everything's in here if you need to look it up. So if you think, oh, how on earth do I play a B minor 7 flat 5, you can find it. Okay, let's have a look about all those other chords. So you know how in music we have those fancy pants terms which scare people. Diatonic, when we say diatonic chords, everything we've done so far is diatonic. That just means the natural chords that come up in any key by taking a note, skipping it, playing the next one, taking a note, skipping and playing it, the next one. We have diatonic 3-part chords, which are the ones that have 3 notes, and then we have diatonic 4-part chords, which are the ones with 4 notes, like major sevenths and things like that. Okay, so those are all the chords that come up naturally in a key. If you want to build from minor scales, you can do this as well with minor scales, and you basically end up with the similar things but in a different order. Minor scales, we have 3 main types of minor scales: natural, minor, and natural, melodic, and harmonic. So it gets a bit more complicated. So most people think in terms of chord construction as coming from the major scales. And believe it or not, every major scale has a minor equivalent. So all the notes that make up A minor are the same as all the notes that make up C major, just starting from an A. And the same with the chords. All right, so that can be useful as well. So yeah, Karen, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to confess, I am a sound hole sniffer as well as a book sniffer. Isn't that terrible? I tell you what, a fresh ukulele. This is I think that's basically the reason I had a bookshop and a ukulele shop, is because I like sniffing things. There's nothing better than a brand new ukulele. This is for one from Canalea, and it comes in and you smell it, and you can smell the wood and the lacquer, and it's just, oh, it's lush. Anyway, I'm the same with shoes. Doc Martens, don't get me started. The smell of a fresh pair of Doc Martens, oh, heavenly. Right, I'm moving swiftly on. I'm going all red now, aren't I? I haven't had any questions in, so I'm going to carry on, but do send them through. It's really important if there's anything you don't understand. Remember, you can watch them plenty of times. So on sheet 7, I have this. What about all those other chords? Because there's all kinds of chords, isn't there, in the world? There's things like suspended, augmented, 13ths, ninths, and things like that. Let's have a look at those. The easiest way to think about it is these other chords are just the chords that we've already worked out, major, minor, or major sevenths, minor sevenths, with an alteration. So I kind of think of them as like man-made chords. They're not like natural chords that come up in a key. Someone's done something to that chord to make it sound different. And they're kind of, a lot of them are like, I don't know if you Americans, because I know we've got a few Americans in at the moment. We always do, which is amazing. I love Americans. I used to be married to one. What am I talking about? Yeah, sorry. Our American cousins might not have this advert. Ron Seal, it does what it says on the tin. It's an advert we have over here for creosote stuff that you put on your fence. Anyway, all these other types of chords are kind of like they do what they say on the tin. So try not to overthink about it, and let's just have a look. So sixth chords. What are sixth chords? They really are as easy as this. A sixth chord is a chord that already exists, say a C major or a D minor, with the 6th note of the scale added. Okay? So if we know that a C major chord is 1, 3, 5, C, E and G, because we've played a note, skip one, played another. A C6 chord is that major chord with the 6th note of the scale added, right? So that would be C, E, G. And what's the 6th note of C? C, D, E, F, G, A. And we can test that out. If you just play your ukuleles with no fingers, this is everyone's favourite chord, isn't it? Because you don't have to do anything. C, 2nd string down. E, 3rd string down. G, string nearest your nose. And then we have an A. That A on the bottom string open. C6. Now, you already know, everyone kind of knows what a major and a minor chord sounds like, and we've talked about sevenths, just giving it an added richness. Adding a sixth to a chord gives it a jazzy, almost like this sounds really artsy, but almost like quite a floating feel. I always think of sixth chords. So they kind of sound, I guess, jazzy and a little bit unresolved. And we can hear the sound of a sixth by replacing a chord with it. So you know how we did this D minor 7 to G7 to C major 7? Whenever you get a sixth chord with no other letters in front of it, just C6, that's a type of major chord because it just means a C major with the sixth note added. Yeah? No, wrong one. That was a major 7. Like that, okay? So what we're going to do this time, instead of playing C major 7 at the end, we'll do D minor 7, G7, C6 like this. And that's what musicians do. They take a chord that already exists, such as a C major or a C major 7, and we turn it into a sixth chord just to give it a bit of variety. Sometimes when I'm playing jazz music, I'll swap them about even within the same verse. Do ba da ba 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 ba. Might have a C major 7. Ba ba da ba ba ba. The next time. Ba ba da da ba ba ba. C6. Ba ba da 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 da. So a C6 chord you can just swap for a C major chord. It's that simple. What would a minor 6 chord be? Well, that would be a minor chord with the sixth note of the scale added. It honestly is that simple. Hopefully this is starting to demystify it, because a lot of the times, right, we see those funny chords, don't we? Like this next one, C6/9, and it sounds so exotic and you think, what the heck is that? But actually, when you demystify it, it kind of makes sense, and it makes it a bit more satisfying when you know where it's come from. So a C6/9 chord, believe it or not, it's what it says on the tin. A 6/9 chord is a type of chord, let's say C major, with the sixth note of the scale and the ninth note of the scale added. And you might think, what? Hang on a minute, scales only go up to 7, don't they? C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And then that's it. We start again, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. But we can also think of scales as like never ending. Like imagine that C major scale like we've got written out on the sheet next to me goes on and on forever. And rather than going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we think of it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, we just, for the C6/9 chord, for instance, we take the C chord and we would add the note under 6 and the note under 9. That's all it is. A C6/9 chord is a C with the sixth note and the ninth note of the scale added. And those, again, are interchangeable. They give a very jazzy feel. I love these at the end of a piece of jazz music or blues because they just sound cool as heck. Do you want me to show you how to do one? Let's have a look at a C6/9 chord. The easiest way to play this one, again, sorry about my manky finger, it's horrible, isn't it? Is to bar the whole of the second fret, and then we can put either our second finger down over the bottom 2 strings of the 3rd fret. I actually find it easier, for some reason, just the way my fingers fall on the fretboard, to use 1 and 3 like that. And this one kind of just adds strength over here or just sits somewhere in the middle. Okay. So in effect it's 2, 2, 3, 3, isn't it? And it just has a jazzy sound because we're adding a kind of dissonance of that ninth, which is super nice. Again, it's interchangeable. So if I'm playing that D minor 7, G7, I could play this one at the end. Isn't that cool? I could play a normal C. I could play a major 7. I could play a C6. I could play a C6/9. So they're all interchangeable. As long as a chord comes from a particular type of chord, you can change them. So a C major could be swapped over with C major 7, C6 or C6/9. A C minor could be swapped over with C minor 7, C minor 6, C minor 6/9, for instance. Ah, Pete, you know how earlier I said sometimes I've got a car parker question? That question from Pete is a really good one that we're going to come back to in a minute. So, there we go. Pete was asking, this is a brilliant question. I'll take this one from Esther in a sec as well. Pete was asking, how do I play a 5-note 6/9 chord? Because we've only got 4 strings. Yeah! You read my mind, Pete, because if we flip the next page or 2 in a minute, at the top of the 10th page, it says, isn't that too many notes for ukulele? So I'm going to explain it in a minute. When we have extended chords on ukulele, we can't play all the notes because we've only got 4 strings. So on a ukulele, we have to do the next best thing and we have to drop certain notes. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail later on. But when I play a C6/9, let's have a look at it. In fact, let's have a look. I'll come back to yours in a minute, Esther. Let's do Pete's first. Let's have a look at the notes that make up that C6/9. We've got, let's go 1 string at a time. Here is an A. That's the 6th note of the scale. Here is a D. Now you could think of the D as the 2nd note of the scale, but if you keep going along, that's also the 9th, isn't it? So this is our 6th note. This is our 9th. The next one down is a G. That's our 5th. And the next one down is a C, which is our tonic, our root is a C, isn't it? So which one have we got missing out from there? When I do it this way, we've got no E, have we? Okay. But that's fine, because the E tells you whether it's major or minor, but we know that this is a type of major chord. So we've just left out one of the notes. In a minute, Pete, I'm going to explain a bit more detail about that, which notes we want to leave out, because it's important if you're building these chords yourself, and I go into a lot of detail. The main thing for now is think about what you definitely don't want to miss out is the notes that give the chord its name. If this chord is called a C6/9, we don't want to miss out the 6 and the 9, right? Because that's what makes it a C6/9. The E doesn't kind of really influence it that much. We'll find out later. I'll tell you a bit more about that. Okay, but that's what happens. So we have to approximate it. On a piano, a C6/9, you would actually play 5 notes, but obviously we can't. Great question again. Is this not an F6/9? Yes, it is. A lot of the time, because there's only so many combinations of these chords in different order, a lot of the time you have 2 chords which have the same shape. So you are absolutely right. That is an F6/9, because an F6/9, the notes just end up to be the same as a C6/9. Just like when we play this open chord, we can call it a C6. We can also call it an A minor 7. It depends what key we're in, which one we call it. And if you're interested, I'll go into that in a bit more detail. Let me know, and I can. But you're absolutely right. There are some chords that end up with exactly the same shape, but they're different chord types, which just we name them after which chord we've built them from. Can I just quickly give you an example? I'm just going to go off on a tangent because I think it's really important today. We've got plenty of time to just finish off this next bit in a little while. Let me just show you something. So let's have a look at, just to explain ever so quickly how you end up with 2 chords that have different names. Oh, I think Robin's saying they have Ronsil over there as well. Cool. So let's have a look at that C and A minor 7, C6 and A minor 7. I've got a feeling I might be answering Esther's question here as well. Yes, this is brilliant because this is answering Esther's question. Esther, that's a really easy one because yes, yeah. So the the sixth chord of one key is always the same as the relative minor seven of another. Don't sweat that too much, but C6 is always the same as F minor 7. C6 is always the same as A minor 7. F6 is the same as D minor 7, and so on and so forth. Let's have a quick look at why you end up with two chords with different names. Let's take that C6 A minor 7. Now, what is a C6 chord? That's a C major chord, which is this one, with the 6th note of the scale added. What's the 6th note of C major? C, D, E, F, G, A. So we need to add an A to this C chord to turn it into a C6. And we do that by replacing this note, which is a duplicate, with an A. We end up with an C6, right? Wow. What if I wanted to turn an A minor into an A minor 7? Well, an A minor 7, we learnt this, didn't we, earlier? You might have forgotten it, but an A minor 7 is an A minor with the 7th note of the scale added. Okay? The 7th note of A minor, A, B, C, D, E, F, is G. How do we turn this chord into one with a G in it? We replace the duplicate note, an A, so we got 2, with a G. So by turning an A minor into an A minor 7, we end up with this shape, no fingers. By turning a C major into a C6, we end up with this shape, no fingers. That's the same for loads of these chords. There's only so many ways you can kind of put these chords together in different variations. So you end up with two chords with the same thing. The reason we call it one or the other, and you might think I'm pedantic why we would call it one rather than the other, is because it influences what other musicians would play. If this goes over your heads a bit, don't sweat it too much. But when we're playing a C6 chord, the bassist is likely to play a C note as part of his bass run because it's come from a type of C chord. When you're doing an A minor 7th, the bassist is more likely to play an A in the root because it's come from a type of A chord. So it influences what other musicians would play. So if we've replaced a C with a C6, we would call it a C6. If we've replaced an A minor with an A minor 7, we call it an A minor 7. They both have different functions, even though they're exactly the same thing. If you're really into your theory, I'm going to go over this dead quick. Some people brains will be melting now, which is totally fine. Mine does that after a while. If you want to know which ones go together, when you have a type of 6 chord like C6, it always goes together with the minor 7, which is 6 higher. C, D, E, F, G. So a C6 is the same as A minor 7. An F6, F, G, A, B flat, C, D. An F6 is the same as a D minor 7. It can just be a handy little tip for remembering them, because if you need to play an F6 in a song, a lot of people don't know what F6 is, but it's the same chord as the D minor 7, and a lot of people know that one. So it just helps you. But don't sweat that too much anyway. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? How that works, really. Yeah. You get an F6/9 and a C6/9, exactly the same chord. Okay. So that's 6 and 6/9s. Think of them as adding a little bit of a coolness or a little bit of an unresolved quality to a chord that already exists. Suspended chords are really lovely. Let's have a look at suspended chords. Now these are kind of man-made chords again. We've taken a chord and we've altered it. And it's really simple. Once you get it, you'll be like, oh, that's cool. That's really nice. And I can give you a practical way to use these as well, which is really cool. A suspended chord is when we take the 3rd note of a chord. So that major triad, the main 3 notes that make up a major chord, say C major, C, E and G, 1, 3, 5. What we do to turn a C into a C suspended 2, or any chord into a suspended 2, is we take the 3rd note and we flatten it, or we replace it with the 2nd note of a scale. So if a C major is C, E and G, instead of playing an E, we change that to a D. Okay, because the second note in the scale of C is a D, right? So a C major is C, E and G, a C sus2, C, D and G. Okay, it's that simple. It's like we've suspended. It's like we've taken this note and we've dangled it elsewhere. It's not sat in the middle, it's sat to the left, okay? That's all it is. I'll give you an example. Here's a C chord. Actually, it's not the easiest example. I'll give you a G one, actually. Let's do a G one. Here's a G chord. We all know G major, don't we? Yeah? And a G chord is G, B and D. That's just the major triad, G, B and D. And to turn a G chord into a G sus2, we take the third note of the G major scale, which is this one, which is B, and we replace it with the second note of the scale, which is A. And we do that for G chord like this, just by lifting this one up. That's a B note, and we replace it with an A note. So if this is a G major chord, lift that one up, you get a G suspended 2. And it's a lovely sound. These ones have a real practical application. If you ever find you're playing jazz or blues or any even pop music and you're on a chord for ages, and you're kind of like, you want something to make it a bit more interesting, a really lovely way to add a bit of movement into your chord is to turn it into a suspended chord. And all you need to do is lift off a finger. Seen guitarists do that. Bob Dylan used to love doing lots of chords like that. Okay, so go. Amazing, Tim. 5:30 in the morning and no Oahu. Oh, that's incredible. Is it still dark outside? Thank you, that's really kind. Remember, there's lots of different ways of making these chords, so don't sweat it if you know another version. There's different options for making these chords, so yeah, that one would be one as well. But don't sweat it, there's all sorts of different ways of doing it. So you might have heard guitarists doing this. They would do it, say, on a D chord, similar. It's a lovely one to do. So G suspended second, we just add that second note. Well, let's go back to a major chord. To do a suspended fourth, we take the third note and we replace it, guess what, with the fourth note of the scale. It's that simple. So if we're playing a G, we take the B, which is the third note, G, A, B. That one there, I've got to be careful not to give everyone the bird. And we replace that one, as our fifth is still sat there, we replace this one with the fourth. So instead of playing a B, G, A, B, we play a C. So we replace that B note with a C. How do we do that for G? Let's stick with the same example. Ah, oh, roosters are crowing, I love it. So rather than playing B there, we could play a C here. And to turn that G major chord into that sus4, we just add our little finger down here, third fret of the A string. Isn't that a lovely sounding chords? G major, G sus4, G major, G sus4. Now, here's a real practical application. If you're playing a G chord for a long time, you can turn it into both a sus4 and a sus2 just by lifting or adding a finger, and it sounds great. I'll quite often own a G for a long time, I'll kind of... That's the practical application of these sus chords. They're used to create a feeling of movement in music without taking away the chord completely. You've probably heard a C sus4 is a C with the fourth note of the scale. The third note turned into the fourth note. So instead of C, D, E, we play C. Sorry, instead of C and E, we play C and F. And then we've also got that G over there. And we can do that by adding this finger. Now, if you do that on and off, this will sound really instinctive to a lot of you. It's that kind of boogie woogie thing, isn't it? So boogie woogie players, makes me think of Jules Holland, boogie woogie. Boogie woogie players, they tend to do sus chords to add a little bit of feeling. So instead of C for ages, get boring, they go C sus4, C sus4. think Keith Richards. That's the start to start me up, isn't it? Start me up, ba-da-da, let me go. So that's the use of suspended chords. And again, this is all I want from today, is to demystify it. Now you know that a suspended chord is just another type of chord with the third note moved either lower to the second or over to the fourth. Yeah. This thing called love. I can't remember the words. Yeah, it is This Thing Called Love, isn't it? Queen. This little thing called love. Yeah, that has loads of those as well. Let's keep going. Keep those questions coming in if you're struggling with any of these. But let's have a look at some more. My favourite type of chord, an augmented chord. I love an augmented chord. Augmented chords sound really a little bit discordant and a little bit jazzy. I kind of think about it as if, let's think about it. Say you're eating a cheese on a cracker. The augmented would be to add a bit of chili sauce on, so psst, has that bit of pizzazz. It has a great sound. So, good question. Again, this is why I love these questions coming up, which is brilliant. Yeah. So if it's one of those just daft things that sometimes in with music notation we shorthand things. So with a sus chord, we if it doesn't say 2 or 4, we actually presume that it's the 4. So if you see C sus, just presume it's the 4. You just generally, because the 4 is a more common substitution than the 2. It just, I don't know, it just sounds more, it's more often used because of. So if you ever see just C sus written, I would go for C sus 4. It's just a shorthand thing. C sus 2. It's not used as often. In fact, it's quite hard to do a C sus 2 because it's not easy to turn this E into a D, because we'd have to change the chord shape completely because the D would be way up here somewhere. So yeah, so think sus 4. And suspended chords, again, love these questions coming in because they're really helping me because I forget to tell you stuff. Suspended chords, technically you could suspend a minor chord, but because it's got that flatted third, we don't really do it. So suspended chords are major chords really. So if you see C sus 4, just think C major with the 4th added. All right, so think about it as a type of major chord. This next one, the augmented, can be done to major chords or minor chords because the 5th is always the same in both chords. The only difference between a major chord and a minor chord, remember, is that minor third at the start. Is it a flat third? Is it a normal third? Whereas the 5th is always the same no matter which one we do, and that's why we call it perfect 5th, if you've ever heard of that phrase, perfect 5th. It's the same in each. An augmented chord, we take that 5th note and we sharpen it. It's that simple. So an augmented chord, say a C augmented, would be a C major, where we take the 5th note of that chord and we sharpen it one. Okay. So let's give you a practical example. We know a C chord again. Sorry, I'm using C all the time. It's just that everyone knows C is, all you do now is C, E and G, right? So it's easier to show you. Hope you don't mind. You can always look these up with other chord types later on. So C major chord, C, E and G, 1, 3, 5, and another C repeated. To turn that into an augmented chord, we take the 5th note, which is the G, C, E, G, 1, 3, 5, and we sharpen it by 1 fret or half a step. So instead of playing a G, we play a G sharp. And that makes a massive difference to the sound of the chord. Have a listen to this. If I use my nail, you'll really hear it. So you know how I said a diminished chord we take away, we flatten a note. Augmenting something means to add to it, right? Like augmenting a potion or something. So we're adding to it or sharpening it. Now these chords, I think of the James Bond chords. You've probably heard that kind of. It's like the start to James Bond, right? And the augmented chords are used to add tension, or like it kind of, it's quite a gritty, kind of aggressive sounding chord. So that's what an augmented chord is. Any chord where we take the fifth note and we sharpen it. And you can have a C minor augmented. That would just be a C minor with the fifth note sharpened. You can do it to any chords. They had a really lovely bit of tension. There's a famous they can also have movement as well. Sometimes they're used in between a minor chord and a major chord. Has anyone heard the song Blue Skies? Blue skies over can't remember the words. Blue skies over nothing but blue skies. The first three chords of Blue Skies are D minor. Try playing it along with me. D minor, but instead of doing it this way as most people would play D minor, do 3 fingers in a row like this. Can you see that? 2 fingers squeezed on the 2nd fret. Yeah. That'd be D minor. Then F augmented, which follows it next in this song, just move that finger, that 2nd finger, from the 2nd fret to the 1st fret. That's an F augmented. Feel the tension in that. And then we finally relieve that tension by taking that finger away. Gives us an F chord. That's the start of Blue Skies. Blue skies. And to prove that it works, that's just one last bit of theory, and then I'll take another question and we'll relax for a minute because we've done a lot today. An F chord or an F major chord is 1, 3, 5, right? Major triad, F, A and C. Let's look at it. F. This one up here is A. This one in the middle is C. And because we've got 4 strings on a ukulele, we repeat this one down here, which is another A. Well, if I turn an F into an F augmented, what I do is I take the 5th note of that scale and I sharpen it. What was the 5th note again? F, not G. A is 3rd, not B flat. C was the 5th note of F. And that's what we did. We took this note here, which is C, and we put a finger on it to sharpen it to a C sharp. F, F augmented. And we paired that with D minor to create that lovely progression. Cool, right? So those are augmented chords. So again, hopefully I'm lifting that veil. Augmented is just any type of chord with a sharp 5. And it's often just written as sharp 5. If you see a chord with sharp 5 after it, it's another name for augmented. Sometimes it will say AUG, which means augmented. Sometimes it will be a plus sign, which means the same thing, A augmented. Now you know what it is. I'm going to give you one last type of chord, and then we're going to finish off with answering, I think, Pete's question from earlier about which notes do we leave out when we do these bigger chords. That's it. Thank you. Thank you. Blue skies following me. Yeah, nothing but blue skies do I see. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Fantastic. So, let's have a look at one other type of chord, which is extended chords. And these we tend to do to dominant chords. Okay. By now, your brains, some of you would be going, but remember, you could always watch this back and watch the second half again, or just watch the whole thing again to refresh yourself. So when we get to this bit, your brain's not so tired. If you've got a cup of coffee, take a big last gulp, okay? One last. We can do this. So the main other type of chord, we've gone through major, minor, major 7, minor 7, diminished, half diminished, suspended, augmented. The other type of chord that we see coming up a lot in ukulele music is where we take a type of 7th chord. Now I'm talking about dominant 7 ones here. Remember, dominant 7ths are the ones that don't have any words in front of them, like major 7 or minor 7. If it just says C 7, that's C dominant 7. If it says C major 7, C major 7, C little m 7, C minor 7. So what we can do to a dominant chord is we can add to it with what we call tensions or extensions. Okay, just means notes that are higher up in pitch or further along the scale. And it's really, again, it's that Ronseal thing. It's what it says on the tin, right? So to turn a C7 into a C9, we have to add the 9th note of the C scale, right? It's that easy, right? So we've got C7 What's the ninth note of the C major scale? Just follow it along on the sheet next to me. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. We add a D. That's what we do. A C9 is like a C7, but with our finger on this D note here, second fret of the C string. And every time you add a note, it gets that little bit more richer, but also a tiny bit more discordant. But I love the sound of that ninth. Okay. A ninth one is answers another question that we're going to see in a minute as well, right? Which is which notes we leave out. I'll explain that in a minute. But just to explain the other types of extended chords, the other next most common are 11ths and 13ths. Well, what are they? They're just the chords with the 11th and the 13th notes of the scale added. But here's an important thing, and this is just answers a lot of questions I get to do with chords, and I just want you to make a mental note of this. If you see a chord, say just 13, it adds all of the dominant notes that come before it. Now that's like, that sounds really complex, but I'll show you what I mean. Look at that ninth chord, for example, C9. It contains the first, the third and the fifth. That's a major triad. The flatted 7, which gives it a dominant 7th feel, and the ninth. Notice that the 11th isn't just 1, 3, 5, 11. It's 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9 and 11. When we've kept skipping those notes, we've kept them in before it. A 13th, 1, 3, 5, major triad, flat 7 tells us their dominant 7, 9, 11 and 13. Okay. This is a really important thing because a lot of people see this come up and they don't understand the difference. If you ever see a chord that says add, like C add 13, where is it? It's an example over here, I think. There we go. This is on your last sheet, I think. If you ever, or penultimate, if you ever see a chord that says add and then a number, it means you don't have all those other ones we skipped in front of it. So a C add 9 is a major chord with the ninth added. Okay, 1, 3, 5, 9. C add 13, major chord with the 13th added. Whereas if you don't have the add and it just says C13, it's actually got 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9, 11, 13. That's the difference. Basically, they're very similar sounding chords because they have that highest note, which gives it a real kind of jazzy feel. But the difference is the ones that aren't adds, they're richer and they're more interesting sounding because they've got all those extra notes. Now, finally, this brings us to the final part of today, and then I'm going to stay quite some time tonight, unless I have no questions, which is possible, but we'll see. I'm going to stay a bit late tonight because I want to take loads of questions, just in case people have digested that and they have any questions. But the last thing I want to show you, this comes back to Pete's question earlier. We had a 5-part chord, and Pete quite rightly asked, we've only got 4 strings on our ukulele. How do we play it? Well, we have to lose some notes, don't we? There's some golden rules in cases in terms of which notes we don't want to lose. This is the important thing. Technically, as long as you are playing the important notes, you can mix and match a little bit. But here are some golden rules, okay? Look at that 13th, for example. That's 6 notes. There's no way we can play 6 notes on the ukulele. We've got to lose at least 2 of them. And depending on which ones we lose, there are lots of different shapes for these all over the fretboard. Okay, but here's the golden rule. We don't want to lose the 3rd if we can avoid it. We don't want to lose the 3rd note of any chord, because if you remember right back at the start of the lesson, the 3rd note tells you whether it's a major or a minor chord, because if it's a flatted 3rd, minor 3rd, it's a minor chord. If it's a normal 3rd, it's a major chord. So we kind of want to leave that note in if we can, because that tells you whether the chord's major or minor. That's really important, right? We kind of want to leave in that flat 7 if we can, because that flat 7 tells you whether a chord is a dominant 7th chord or a major 7th chord. All right, so like we showed earlier, C major 7, C dominant 7. It's all down to that B being a B or a B flat. 7 or a flat 7. So we try and leave that flat 7 in of these types of chords. The rest are basically anyone's game. Oh, there's one more which is really important, which is what it's named after. So in a C13, we've got to have the 13th note, right? Otherwise, it's not a C13. It would be a C9 or a C11 or whatever. So we have to leave that one in as well. But the rest of them, like the first, even the root, you might think that's so important. That root is so important. But we can let that go because the root, the bassist could play the root if we're playing with one. Or, you know, it doesn't matter. There's enough of the chord that we still get the feel of it. So we can let the root go easily. We can let the 5th go easily as well, because that doesn't really tell you if a chord's major or minor. Not so important. And we can also let the earlier tensions go. So in a 13th, we can let the 9th and the 11th go fairly simply, okay? So those are kind of your golden rules. Try not to lose the flatted 3rd. Try not to lose the flatted 7. And try not to lose the note that the chord's named after. All right? So, for instance, when I play... let's do an easier one. Let's do a C9. This was a C7. Here's a quick tip. Again, you don't have to remember this because I've given you so much information today. It might be too much. To turn any 7th chord into a 9th, find the root, in this case C, and play 2 to the right of it, D. Because the 9th note, C9, is the same as the 2, which is always 2 frets to the right of the root. If some of you will find that really interesting and useful, some of you will think, I don't care, that's too much, but that's fine. Anyway, what I was saying is, let's have a look at this C9 chord, what notes we've got. Well, we've got a D, that's the 9th, you can see that in that layer above. We've got an E, that's the 3rd, C, D, E, because that's important, it tells you whether it's a major or minor. This time we've got the G, not that important, but we've kept it in. And we've got the flat 7, because remember, we wanted to keep that in so we know it's a type of dominant chord. So when we play a 9th, we most often just lose the root. So a C9 on the uke, in most occasions, doesn't have a root in it. Isn't that mad? But it works. It's got a really nice sound. I love the sound of a 9. It just kind of adds a real richness. 13ths are lovely as well, just in case you're interested in the sound of them. I'll quite often do them in a piece like Moonglow, sort of. It must have been Moonglow up in the... That's a 13th chord. Notice it's got a slight dissonant quality. The 7th is a bit more straightforward. 13th is richer. Okay, so that's the kind of use for these. I'm going to take a pause there because I think I've covered everything I wanted to. The last sheet just tells you what about this chord, because I've run this workshop with ukulele groups in the past and people have said, you didn't mention this chord, which is totally fine. If you get other types of chords, think of them as just alterations of these main types, okay? If you think major, minor, major 7th, minor 7th, diminished, dominant, and then all the others are kind of just variations of it. So I've given some oddities up there as examples. A 7 flat 9 is a 7th chord with the 9th note of the scale flatted. It's like it says on the tin. A major 9 is a major chord with the 9th added. A minor major 7, which happens sometimes, is a minor chord with the major 7th happened. And all these other types of chords, if you see ones with like sharp 9s, flat 13s, it's just they've taken that number of the chord and they've just sharpened or flatted it. And within reason, there's almost infinite examples of that, because you could take any of the, you know, some of those chords go up to 6 notes and you could sharpen or flatten any of them, couldn't you, to make the chord sound slightly different. But that's all we're doing. It's just kind of using those tensions, and that's why jazz players are so clever, because they know how all those different ones sound. So let's rest our brains. I really hope you found that useful. I know that was a lot. That was a heck of a lot of theory, wasn't it, in one lesson? And I did warn you, I'm so sorry we've not done much playing. I did have some ideas to do some playing earlier, but I think it took me a little bit longer to explain things. That's my fault, not yours. But hopefully, yeah, hopefully that's given you some kind of some ideas of how they all work. The main thing is you know how those chords come into existence, and then you start to kind of put them in your playing and see how they feel. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stick around just for well, for as long as you want, and I want you to ask as many questions with any of that as you want. If you want to add any comments, just even if that was good and it helped you, let me know, because it always makes me feel good if you actually found that useful and you picked up some new knowledge from it. Hopefully you did. If you're utterly confused with things, let me know and I'll do my best to help. And if I can't answer, I'll signpost you in the right direction. So we'll hang on a little bit longer. If you're really into this stuff and you'd like to know more, have a look at my uke theory playlist on YouTube. I've got a whole playlist of, I think it's 30 videos, which goes into each of these things in detail. And whereas this this workshop has tried to cover almost all the chords, that one breaks it down. So we'll have a whole video just looking at, say, 6 chords and stuff. So it can be really useful and putting them into practice. So hopefully that's good. No worries, Jeff. A stiff G&T always helps, I find. So yeah, absolutely. Esther was just asking, I'd like to know the difference between minor chords that I mentioned. Well, to be honest, Esther, in terms of the chords, it's not quite as simple as just saying natural, minor or melodic, because those give root to lots of different types of chords. So like that 7 flat 9, which is on the page next to me, that's actually built off the melodic scale. By using all these different scales, you can come up with different types of chords, and using modes, you can come up with different types of chords as well. So generally, when you're chord building, think of using the natural minor scale, or start from the major and then just add these things. So even like a D minor chord, we saw that was built from a C major scale, wasn't it? It was the second chord in the key of C. So I prefer to think about it that way, really. It gets a bit too, yeah, we don't really think of chords in terms of the major, minor, or the minor natural, the minor melodic, and the natural harmonic. We just get different types of chords from them. So I'll explain that in a bit more detail in our lesson, Esther, because that's quite a hard. I could give you 45 minutes on that. It's really hard, really complex. Jazz musicians, for instance, they often build chords from the harmonic minor and the melodic minor, but yeah, so it's a bit difficult to do in one thing. So yeah, cool. Here we go. Gonna hang on. So Esther was just asking as well, just to check on the 6/9, we lose the 3. It depends, Esther. Sometimes we lose the 5. There's lots of variations of these, and quite often it's whatever is easiest for our fingers. But the key to a 6/9 is we've got to keep the 6 right, and we've got to keep the 9. So that's narrowing it down already. So yeah, you could lose the 1, you could lose the 5, or you could use the 3. We try not to lose the 3, but sometimes it's the easiest thing. That's why that one, we did lose the E, didn't we? Where? That one. So yeah, it could be any of them, but the golden rule of that one, really, it's not a dominant chord, so you don't need the flat 7. But we do definitely need that 6 and the 9. So yeah, you could lose the root, you could lose the 3 or the 5 out of that one. If you can get away with it, just lose the root or the 5. So yeah, cool. Esther's like, yeah, you've had enough, Esther. That's fine. There we go. Yeah, there's loads. If it's, I think the Grace Terzian one is about the difference between the scales rather than the chords, yeah, the difference between the scales is a bit easier to explain than the chords. The chords are a little bit weird, but yeah, the different types of scales, we take a C natural scale, for instance. What we do to turn that into the harmonic is we take the 7th note, which is that one, and we sharpen it. So C natural, C harmonic, we take that 7 and we sharpen it. The reason they do that for the natural harmonic is it gives you the resolution, half step resolution, which is really beautiful. And then the melodic, we basically, there's a big gap now because we've shifted this note from here up. What we do is we take this one and we shift it along as well. So you basically end up with the major scale, but with that flat third. That was too much for 5 minutes. Sorry, guys. But yeah, that's the main differences. Yeah, chords are really hard to explain using those, so I tend to relate them to the major scale. It makes it a lot easier. So if you think about building a D minor, think about building it off the 2nd degree in the C major scale rather than going to a natural harmonic or melodic, if that makes sense. Cool. Well, I hope you found that useful. As I say, I'm going to stick around just a little bit longer, just in case. So, yeah. That's a cool idea. Yeah, thanks, Tim. So Tim's just saying perhaps some themed kind of Capella Mondays. We always theme them, Tim, but normally it's quite generic things like artists, you know, Beatles songs or whatever, or songs that 145. Yeah, that could be great. We could look at songs that use like sixth chords and things like that. Brilliant idea. See, you guys are amazing. You do my job for me, which I love. It gives me ideas. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks, Esther. Yeah, if anyone wants to do a bit more research with this, in terms of chord theory, Phil Dolman has a really good book which kind of explains types of chords, how they're built, and how they fit together. I think it's called Ukulele Music Theory, but just look up Phil Dolman Music Theory book. He's got a couple. One is how songs work, and I think the other one might be called How Chords Work, or Ukulele Theory, something like that. But Phil Dolman's got 2 really brilliant written books for this, so check out his things. He's a really brilliant teacher if you want to dig into it some more. Or of course, like I say, if you check out my Ukulele Theory course, it goes into details. In fact, that Esther, your harmonic, natural, harmonic and melodic, I've got a whole video on the difference between those 3 scales. That could be useful for you to have a look at. It's quite a cool one. And all of this stuff, like I say, check out my Ukulele Theory, and you can take an individual chord. And the good thing about the theory course is, because I've got time to look at each chord individually, you can apply it. So you can actually learn some songs with a particular type of chording. You can learn how, say, a suspended kind of affects the sequence, which is really nice, and so on and so forth. Cool. There we go. Any other questions? Okay. Just whilst I'm checking to see if any other questions do come in. That's it. Thank you. Thanks, Esther. Esther's looked it up. So Phil's books are How Songs Work, Understanding Chord Progressions on the Ukulele. That's his 2nd book. There's one before that as well, Esther. I've got it somewhere, but I don't want to run out on you, and I've got it in that room, but I'll just look it up. You'll be able to find it. Yeah, cool. Yeah, just whilst I'm seeing if any other questions come in, just to remind you a couple of things, that this coming Monday, Capella is suspended because of the Queen's funeral turning it into a bank holiday. So I won't be here Monday for the normal Capella, but we will be back for that the Monday afterwards. And these live lessons, if you're interested, these come every other Wednesday. So put it in your diary if you can. 2 weeks today, we'll be having a look at another piece. And hopefully my regular, that's it, Pete's got it. How Music Works is the first one, and then How Songs Work is the second one for Phil Dolman. Thanks, Pete. That's brilliant. And hopefully my regular listeners, students, attendees, whatever, will tell you, my Wednesday lessons aren't normally anywhere near as heavy, as theory heavy as this. quite often we're actually looking at a piece of repertoire. So perhaps for the next one, we'll pick a really nice piece of fingerstyle or something, so you can really get into the playing. But I just felt I've had a lot of questions on chords recently, so I just thought it's a really good chance to really delve into it deep. Oh, that's good to hear. Thanks, Linda, as well. That's brilliant. So next, 2 weeks time, we'll have a look at something else. If you want to look at any of these live lessons, again, on my website, which is down here now, mattsteadukulele.com, you can find all of my previous live lessons. So you won't be able to take part live, obviously, but you can still follow all the comments and everything. They're all available there. And there's quite a few there now. So I've archived them all through the weeks. So if you've missed any, you can take part. There's some really, really interesting ones, I think. Some really interesting pieces of music. And on this website as well, I have all my courses. So there's a beginner's course, which is completely absolute beginner's ukulele, from how to hold the thing to play any first chords. There's intermediate, where we dip into some more complex kind of strumming styles and finger picking. Then we've got next steps, where we start to look at things like chord melody and claw hammer, getting a bit more sophisticated. There's playing up the dusty end, which is all about taking chords like C7, for instance, and playing it in different places, which is a really cool thing to be able to do. And there's also, which is really applicable today, my uke theory course. And they're all sort of 24 to 30 videos long, so there's quite a lot in there, and they're all sequential. So you can follow them as a course, or you can dip into them here and there. And don't forget, if you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, I know people are always saying subscribe to this and that, and it drives people mad, doesn't it? But it will just help you to let you know when there's new videos coming up. So I've got my super quick tips. This is literally a minute long videos where I'll teach you about a particular skill or a particular piece of knowledge. And it just means if you're bored and you want a quick bit of ukulele learning, you don't want a heavy lesson, and you just want to get your uke out, have a go at something, they're a minute long little ukulele hacks, and those are coming every day. So if you subscribe, you'll get a little notification to let you know when the next one is up, and likewise with these live lessons and everything as well. So brilliant, fantastic, cool. Oh, thank you. That's good to hear. Thanks, guys. It's really nice. Sometimes it's weird with live lessons, because you feel a little bit like you're kind of talking to the void, and it's really nice when I get these questions and comments back. It lets me know you're all still following and you haven't gone, oh my goodness, hate you, Matt, this is too hard. So thank you. Really appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to sign off now then, folks. So you can always email me if you've got any other questions, matt@theukeroom.com. Or hopefully some of those courses will help you. And hopefully one last time, I could see you in person next year at the Forest Ukulele Retreat. 30th of June to 2nd of July 2023. So we've only got about 25 tickets left now out of the 60. So if you're interested, come on, come and join me. Come and join some amazing tutors, and we'll all have loads and loads of fun. I know a load of you that follow these live lessons have signed up, so I can't wait. Some of you I've never met in person before, so I hope you don't mind. I might have to just touch you to make sure you're real and not just an avatar. So that sounded weird, but I hope you know what I mean. I can't wait to see you and meet you. It's going to be great. It's going to be loads of fun as well. So yeah, fantastic. Thanks, guys. You take care. Thanks, David. That's really lovely. Cheers. Thank you. Well, take care, everyone, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks for the next live lesson. Perhaps in a couple of weeks for the next kind of capella, and I'll see you probably on Facebook if not before. Take care, everyone. Much love.